All right, it's Brandon Vogt with the Farm to Table report presented by Desert Sky Ranch. You can learn more at dsrcattle.com. And Matt Zorn is with us today. And Matt, today we're going to be talking about lab-grown meats. And Matt, what have you found out about this stuff?
Nothing good, Brandon. So when we started these reports, we talked about how some of them would focus on changes in the food industry. And I had mentioned how some of the changes would be good and some would be bad. So one of the arguments today is that production of livestock is harming the environment. And one of the proposed solutions is lab-grown, or what they call cultivated meat. And this is meat that's produced without the actual growth and harvesting of live animals. But what do we know about lab-grown meat? So lab-grown chicken was approved by the USDA for sale in the United States in June of this year. Now, there were two companies, Good Meats and Upside Foods, who were given approval to start producing and selling lab-grown chicken in the U.S. So far, they've reached about $865 million in private funding for this project. Now, companies are also working on lab-grown beef, pork, and lamb, but only chicken's been approved so far. Now, to produce lab-grown meat, manufacturers use what's called a bioreactor to produce cultivated proteins. Now, bioreactors are most commonly used by the pharmaceutical industry to make things like drugs, medicines, and vaccines. Now, they also need animal cells to produce these cultivated proteins. Now, primary animal cells only multiply a few times, and they do it very slowly. So they need a cell that multiplies indefinitely and at a much faster rate. So they're using something called immortalized cells. Now, what's an immortalized cell? Now, by definition, immortalized cell lines are derived from sources that have abnormalities or mutations that permit them to continually divide and do it rapidly. But what are some of the examples of these immortalized cells? Well, the most common are tumor cells and cancer cells. Now, if that's not enough to make you kind of think twice about these products, believe it or not, there's other issues. First off, lab-grown meat isn't especially healthy to eat. Experts say cultivated proteins could and should be defined as ultra-processed. And we all know there's many studies out there that show links to cancers and other diseases when we consume ultra-processed foods. So you kind of got to step back for a minute. You say, okay, but the whole reason for this was the environment. What about the environment? We're helping the environment with lab-grown meat, right? Well, maybe not. Edward Spang from UC Davis says studies show cultivated meats is not necessarily good for the environment either. Those bioreactors that I mentioned that are used to create the cultivated proteins, they draw a lot of energy and could be anywhere from 4 to 25 times worse for the environment than growing meat naturally the way we do now. So you look at this and I think there's three things KKOB listeners need to know. Number one, you're not going to find these things in stores anytime soon. The cost is way too high. Currently, it costs tens of thousands of dollars just to produce a single ounce of these meats. Number two, unless people are forced to eat lab-grown meat, it most likely will not gain mass appeal. And number three, lab-grown meat could follow the same cycle as green energy, where the government over-regulates naturally grown meat, sending prices skyrocketing, and then over-subsidizes lab-grown meat in an attempt to help it compete.
Yeah, and one of the things they told us was the environmental impact and how much healthy this stuff will be for people. But when it's ultra-processed like this, I don't see how it's any more healthy than a regular meat.
It really is hard to see, if you look at this, how it's a positive change for the food industry, the consumer, the environment. But the thing is, it's here. Lab-grown chicken's been approved, and the others are coming. So, I think the consumer down the road is going to have to look at this, and they're going to have to make their own decisions based on what they feel is best for themselves.
Yeah, and Matt, Desert Sky Ranch, tell me a little bit about what you guys do there.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. So Desert Sky Ranch, we grow Angus cattle to order right here in New Mexico for people who want their freezers filled with healthy beef that's not grown in a lab.
Real cows.
Yes, they moo and everything. And if listeners want better quality at a better price, they can check out our program at dsrcattle.com or call us at 505-864-3900.
All right, Matt, thanks for being with us. You're on News Radio KKOB.